second. So thanks very much for joining everybody once again. This is the webinar that's going to cover IoT. I'm Jane Hammersley, I work for Maverick, and I've got my colleague David Hartwell from TechData with a big grandfather clock in the background so we can keep a good eye on the time. Okay, so thanks for joining everybody. I'm going to just start with a couple of background slides for you if you're not aware of who Maverick are and who TechData are. So let's see if I can get this going here. Okay, so a little bit about the webinar today. There is a question and answer box at the bottom of your screen. Please put any questions in there throughout the webinar. You won't be able to talk to us and we can't see you, but we can answer questions, and I'll be monitoring that Q&A box throughout. There are no dumb questions, believe me, I've asked all of them. So please use the Q&A box, not the chat box, your Q&A box, and we'll come back to those questions at the end. And just to say, guys, this is just the start of it. IoT is a big subject, but we're going to take a small section of it today and introduce it to you. And then we're going to support you along your journey moving forward. So once again, remember just to put your questions in that box throughout the webinar, and we'll come to them at the end. Just a quick reason why we're here. Why are we doing this? You probably know this already, but there are something north of 60 million meeting spaces in the world today. Actually, recent stats say that there are probably more like 240 million meeting spaces when you take up those personal and exec office spaces as well. And we know that the consumption of video minutes, whether it's Skype, Teams or Zoom, is increasing exponentially. In fact, that the latest stats that came out only a few weeks ago show that there are 500,000 regular Teams users every single day, 3 billion Skype calls still made every day, and you see that stat there, 39 billion Zoom minutes done annually. More and more people are working remotely, more and more people are using multiple UC platforms. And this is great news for WCD, because WCD is that blank canvas that users can walk up and use their own devices and plug into the display that you're producing. So we're in a fantastic position here. For those of you who don't know who Maverick are, we're part of TechData. We're a global specialist AV distributor. Been in the business for more than 30 years now. In fact, we started as a small disty in Reading, and now we're a global smart meetings and smart signage solution. And actually, with the power of TechData, and David's going to talk to you about an element of that today, is we can help organizations make complex display meeting room configurations, and we can help them bring that into reality and make it simple. And Maverick, where we came from is that whole core AV background, projection, displays, connectivity, control, mounts, audio, interactivity, plus our own brand called Vision. And Vision has a range of connectivity mounts and cables and connectors. Quite recently, over the last 3 to 5 years, our portfolio has changed significantly into this smart meeting space, where we are supporting the channel, and we're channel only with conference solutions, compute displays. That means displays with an onboard computer, such as Microsoft Surface Hub, and then total room solutions. And WCD would be part of that category. Now that is making up more than 30% of Maverick's business moving forward. So smart meetings is massively important to us. That can only be delivered with the help of TechData. And these blue elements here are where TechData really does come to the fore. TechData is a $37 billion organization. Now you can see device application there. So device would be maybe a Surface Pro or a laptop. Applications would be the applications such as WSI or Workspace Intelligence, which will be part of the WCD portfolio. And then IoT, cloud and data analytics will be massively important when we're selling and supporting WCD. And David will come on to tell us why. You've got security elements certainly coming more and more into audio-visual as our AV devices sit onto an IT network. Security becomes hugely important. And GLM is our Global Lifecycle Management Services. And we will be supporting you with services around WCD, which will help your channel install, deploy, and integrate WCD into existing networks. I talked about it earlier, but smart meeting programs, smart meetings underpin everything we do around also smart signage as well, and our global partners that we support. So that's a little bit about the pitch about Maverick and TechData. I'm going to stop sharing now and let David take over. And while David's just setting up his presentation for you, just a quick reminder, don't forget to put your questions in the Q&A box there at the bottom. I haven't got any questions yet, so and don't be afraid either. Your questions won't be shown to anybody else. And as I say, there are no dumb questions. So I'm going to introduce my colleague David Hartwell, who works in the IoT team for TechData, and he's going to educate us all, and probably educate me as well on this one. So David, thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you, Jane. I'm going to give you just a helicopter view of IoT, and particularly where around smart meeting rooms and connected buildings, and why it's becoming so important. So I'm going to introduce you first to myself, and then I'm going to just take you through what is IoT, very high level. It's nowhere near as complicated as people make it out to be. I think it's like all of these things. Everybody likes it to be incredibly complex. And when you get down to bits and bytes, of course, everything's complex. But in terms of overall understanding, it's a very simple proposition. And you're all very familiar with it, I'm sure, at home. Everybody's got something IoT, even cars these days will IoT have got lots of sensors on them that now transmit over the internet. So it's nowhere near as complicated as people make it out to be. Smart spaces, this is my area, and I want to talk about what's hot right now, what's going on in the market, and talk a little bit about use cases where WCD would be right on the money, and why you would be, where you should really get interested in WCD as a proposition to your customers. And then again, this one is why Maverick and why you should be involved in the IoT side of things. Of course, Maverick and yourselves are very much around AV, but there's a whole world out there which I think will pull through huge amounts of WCD projects that you might never have seen before. And then how we can all work together. And then I'll hand it back to Jane for questions. So just a little bit about me. So I'm David Hartwell, and I'm one of an industry team. So we have 4 industry teams within our small group. So I'm within the Advanced Solutions part of the Avnet business, and IoT is considered to be Advanced Solutions. Some people would say IoT has been around for many years. But my role is particularly around smart spaces, as I've said before. And there's a little bit about me there. Love cycling, wish I could do more of it, but too busy working. So this is what Wikipedia says about IoT, and really look at it. It's unbelievable. I mean, I do understand this, and I've been in IoT for 10 years, but it's ridiculously complicated, and I don't think it should be that complicated to explain. Here's TechData's view of IoT. And basically, what we do is on the left, that we have a complex ecosystem, there's no doubt about it. We do, and our customers do. And so everything from enterprise and the process and the systems integration through to what sort of dashboard you're going to surface the data on. And then you've got to put all of this data onto the cloud. And then how about connecting all of your sensors to the cloud? So there's a whole bunch of connectivity there, and there's many different ways of doing that. And then there's gateways that collect the data from the sensors and put it onto the cloud. And then there's the sensors themselves. All of that is in itself quite a complicated ecosystem to control. But the good news is there's been a lot of standards recently around IoT, and there's been a whole bunch of protocols that you might have heard of, and WCD uses them, called MQTT is one of them. And basically, everybody is starting to coalesce around a whole bunch of standards that weren't there before, and it's made life a lot easier for everybody. So I think the good news is that there's a lot of interoperability and interconnectivity between all the various devices that makes life a lot easier. So the key thing, though, with any IoT project is, where it says made simple, start here, the business outcome, that is really the key thing. We've seen many projects that have been almost science experiments for which the customer's being prepared to pay, but they don't go anywhere because they don't really meet the business outcomes. There's no business sponsorship behind them. And I think one of the key things that we've understood is that we need to create solutions for customers, something that's shrink-wrapped, easy to consume, and WCD is absolutely one of those. WCD is shrink-wrapped. You buy it, and it's all the connectivity is built in, and very quickly the customer can start getting data that they never knew that they could get before. So let's just talk a little bit about where WCD will play in this, and just the whole idea about IoT. This is IoT on one slide. So here, where my cursor's going around, is the sensors. Now, as you know, WCD's got a bunch of sensors, and in some later slides I'll talk about those sensors. Then we connect to a gateway, and what a gateway does is it connects the language of the sensors to some sort of network. That network could be your GSM network, mobile network, or it could be simply a wired Ethernet network, or anything, radio specialist. There's all sorts of different ways of getting the data out. 9 times out of 10 with WCD, that would be just connecting to the customer's wired network. But either way, you need a gateway to make the transition. And then we move over here to what's on the internet. So everything else in here in this big loop is on the internet. And basically, we have a whole bunch of dashboards, insights into what's happening from those sensors, particularly with WCD, but with cloud, it's anything can be, any type of analytics can happen in the cloud. And what is the cloud? Well, the cloud basically is, I remember seeing a sticker on the back of somebody's iPad. The cloud is simply other people's computers, and that's all it really is. It sounds very complicated and there's a lot of complexity behind it, but really that's all the cloud is somewhere in a data center somewhere is other people's computers that you're borrowing to run some workloads of your own. So run your own dashboarding or whatever. The beauty of it is that those other computers are highly scalable because they've got lots of other servers in their server farm, and they're running it for you, so you don't have all the costs of running it. You don't have the costs of disaster recovery if something goes wrong. You don't have the costs of putting more disks in if you need more space. That's all taken care of for you. So the beauty of the cloud is you don't have to invest in lots of expensive hardware to be able to run sophisticated workloads. And even better than that, when you're looking at the Azure cloud, there's a whole bunch of things that you could never afford in terms of software as well. You get access to a whole bunch of software like artificial intelligence and machine learning. And when we go through some of the slides later on, you'll see why that's so important. So if you were to buy that software for yourself and then run it, you need a team of data scientists and clever people to keep it running. You don't need any of that. Cloud basically allows you to have servers, network connectivity, disaster recovery, and a whole bunch of sophisticated software, all at rental for when you need it. So you just pay a subscription model, and when you need it, you use it. And and it's highly scalable. So if you need more workload because you've got a big peak, let's say at Christmas or something like that, in the retail world, Christmas is a huge peak, then you can scale it and make it bigger, and then scale it back again and pay less for it. And you could never do that if you were running your own data center. So moving on, this is our famous pizza model. This was written by a colleague, and as you can imagine, she's Italian, so immediately turned to food and pizza. But the whole idea is, why would we, TechData, get involved in IoT? What do we think is key to it? Well, one of the things is that it pulls through more of our core vendor products. And you know, here we're talking specifically about Microsoft and Azure. And every time a WCD device is sold, there'll be another connection to Azure. And that's what it's all about. It's about pulling through consumption of these services. And there are other core vendors that we have that will also are also involved in other IoT projects, and they get pulled through as well. And even in a WCD implementation, some of our other core vendors like Cisco for connectivity, do you remember we talked about connecting these devices to the network? So that could be Cisco, or it could be Aruba, HPE Aruba. So lots of other core vendors could get pulled through in a smart office project that implemented WCD. So everybody wins basically by implementing smart office and WCD. And then we have on the right a whole bunch of pure play vendors, and we have over 100 of them now that provide specialist services for particular industries. So IFM are very strong in manufacturing, Keon are very strong in retail. So all of these, and Vodafone speaks for themselves. So all of these vendors add to an ecosystem that can be brought to bear to provide a solution for any particular customer. So this is our value add in the big world of IoT, is that our vendors become more engaged with us. So, and hopefully you will too, become more engaged with us because we have answers to customers' particular solutions, and we're creating them and bringing them all together, making sure they all are interoperable and packaging up solutions for particular industries. So we have, as I'm sure you're aware, thousands of business partners across Europe, and they have a huge market reach and they see lots of different use cases. So they bring them to us, and what we try to do is create solutions that meet those particular needs. And the rest of it, we don't know if we can gloss over because it's not really too relevant to this presentation. So at the center of the IT ecosystem, so we call ourselves within the advanced solutions business solution aggregators. What we try to do is incorporate a number of products into our solutions that meet particular business needs, and we'll bring on any particular vendor or business partner that can help us meet a solution that we think the market needs. And so we're always on the lookout for novel, unique solutions that can be brought to market, and also we can help our business partners take solutions to market themselves. And we've done that in several occasions now, where we've actually provided expertise so that they can take their own product to market. And then, of course, we hope to put their product that they've developed onto our line card so that we can sell it to other business partners. So that's the whole role of a solution aggregator. So this is really just to say, this is our European core vendors. You can see there's a whole bunch of core vendors on there. And those vendors are the ones that we would like to attach solutions to. And a key one here that we're talking about is Microsoft. So Microsoft is, in this particular case, we're working very closely with them. We're working on a program called IoT Accelerate right now. And IoT Accelerate is where Microsoft will actually invest their own funds in novel solutions for various markets. And we are working with various business partners and vendors in creating a whole bunch of solutions, from utility companies to retail companies to travel and logistics to manufacturing. So this is the one that we really want to talk about. That was the high level overview. Let's talk about WCD and connected buildings. So connected buildings is part of smart spaces. And according to Gartner, smart spaces is two things. Smart cities, so that's the fabric of a city, making a city work better through technology, through digital technology. And then connected buildings, and this is all about improving the way and the efficiency and the user satisfaction of a building. So what is a high performance building, and why do they matter? If you get it right, and this is partly technology, but partly advanced building materials. So for instance, the first high-rise building made of wood is going up in Norway. I think it's Norway at the moment, using a very novel technology that's basically carbon neutral. So basically, if you construct your building correctly and you put all of the right smart technology in, you can end up with a 40% reduction for the same amount of space than a conventional building. Now, interestingly, you can still end up with a 10 to 20% reduction on a standard building right now, the buildings we're in, just by applying smart technology to it, by applying IoT technology and using artificial intelligence to reduce energy consumption. And you'll see where this leads into WCD in a minute. So all of that, if you have a building that's truly smart and built to the latest standards, you can have a 29% increase in the net operating income from that building. So as a landlord, you can get 29% more revenue from that building. And the operating expenses go down by 18%. So basically, it absolutely makes sense to invest in IoT in your buildings and on the latest building materials. Now, we all know that the buildings right now, the built environment is out there. We can't change it. They're not going to change the whole structure of the building or knock it down and build it again. So what could we do with existing buildings and existing meeting spaces and office spaces? That's the question. And the answer to that is on the next few slides. So these are some of the challenges that you have in current buildings. So all of these systems are usually standalone. The heating, ventilation, air conditioning system has been put in by one contractor, works perfectly well in a standalone mode, not very efficiently. And then things like physical security, access control, video surveillance, all of these things are on separate systems in a typical building, even a fairly modern building. And if you add it all up together, if these things were able to communicate with each other, what more would you know about the building? How much more intelligently would you be able to operate it? Now, the key thing is in those buildings, they don't have the intelligence within the buildings. There's no compute power within the building that could possibly do all of this, but there is in the cloud. And in the cloud, there's a whole bunch of artificial intelligence, machine learning, that if you could take all of that information from those siloed systems and put it into the cloud, perhaps you could do something quite brilliant and really reduce the energy consumption and improve the environment for the occupants. So the key thing around reducing energy costs, which is one of the interesting aspects for any existing building, is really around lighting, energy use, and dashboards. So do you remember we spoke about dashboards before? Understanding how the building is used and adapting the building better to how people are using it. So if we talk about where Maverick is strong, we talk about these three key places: the workplace, the classroom, and digital signage. And here we're really talking about the workplaces where WCD, I think, is going to be the strongest. Of course, classroom as well is I'm sure, a possibility, but there may be some specialist solutions, and I'm not an expert in that. But the workplace is the key one around here. But you'll also see some uses for digital signage as well that are increasingly coming into office spaces, and we'll talk about that on the subsequent slides. So what is Windows Collaboration Display? Well, it's really a wonderful way of enhancing an office space, which I'm sure you're aware, with a beautiful touchscreen display with all of the Microsoft features behind it. But it's also got a whole bunch of sensors that you might not know about. So the 4K camera, which is standard, that is one of the things that is not taken out as standard to Microsoft Azure. but everything else in there is. So the 1080p camera can be used for understanding how many people are in the meeting room that it's in. Ambient light, so that can tell you whether the lighting is at the correct level within the meeting room. And quite often we'll see that the lighting's either too high or too low. And how about when somebody's presenting that you automatically dim the lighting? How many people have been struggling trying to find where the lighting controls are? All of that. And if it's unoccupied, why don't we turn the lights off? There we start looking at energy saving. Temperature, that's a big one. I've been looking at a few studies to see how well temperature regulation goes on in meeting rooms, and you'd be surprised. I'm sure we've all been in meeting rooms that are too hot and everybody says, oh, this room's always too hot, I can't regulate it, or this room's always too cold, nothing we can do about it. All of those things waste energy. So if you actually knew what the temperature was and you could signal that back to the cloud, and then from the cloud it could take it back to your heating and ventilation system within the building, you could then regulate meeting rooms in a much better way. And particularly if you knew that they were going to be occupied in, let's say, the next couple of hours, there's going to be a big meeting room with 20 people in it. There's a big heat load from all those people. Actually, we can set the meeting temperature about 2 degrees lower because we know all of these people are going to be in the room, and increasing the heating load, and make it perfect environment for everybody in there rather than it starting to get too hot and the air conditioning struggling to keep it cool. So all of those things can be done if you've got a little bit more foresight about how that meeting room is going to be used. Humidity is another big one. The more people you have in a room, the more humid it becomes. Now the issue there is that as a room becomes more humid, you need more fresh air intake. If you can tell the air conditioning system to start putting more fresh air intake in advance, then you can keep that humidity under control and keep the space a nice space to be in. Air quality is another one, so that's CO2 typically, carbon dioxide sensors. And again, they can tell you, people breathe out carbon dioxide. So again, you might need more fresh air as the number of people increase. And if there's nobody in there and the air quality is good, then you can shut down the fresh air because putting fresh air and heating it is expensive. And then there's an infrared occupancy sensor as well. So you've got both the camera and the occupancy sensor. So there's a whole bunch of sensors available within the WCD. Now, the other thing that's interesting is that it's a multi-tenanted system. So what that means is that every user of WCD can log in to their own account. They don't see that there's other users there. They only see their own WCD displays and only get their own data. But because it's multi-tenanted, it means that you get the economies of scale. You get a single system to manage. It's much easier to connect to users. You've got all that disaster recovery, and you've got access to all of the smarts that are available in the cloud, like artificial intelligence and machine learning. So going on to your own website, I had a quick look, and this is absolutely 100% the same message as TechData's about smarter buildings. Why is it so important to have occupancy, temperature, air quality, and light? Well, you're really effectively, as soon as you put a display in there, most of these meeting rooms don't have any of these sensors, and to put them in is actually quite an expensive project to do. It requires mechanical and electrical contractors to come in and pull the ceiling tiles off and run cables in and all of that. And you've got all of that straight away just by putting in a WCD display. So now I've got all of this information straight away in an office room. And we've got to remember that in most offices, the meeting rooms take up a considerable amount of space. And so for those to be operating efficiently is going to be quite important. So again, this is straight from your website. This is how it works. So you can see that you've got your sensor data built into the WCD display. It goes into a secure data storage, and then a whole bunch of analysis all happens on the cloud. And then there's a whole bunch of beautiful reports that come back that tell the the building facilities manager, what's happening in their building, how many meeting rooms are occupied, how many are operating at the correct temperature, what the overall efficiency of the building is and those meeting rooms is in terms of heating them properly. All of those things that will enable them to manage them better. But we can go one step further, and I'll explain that in subsequent slides, that we can actually attach and connect to the cloud services themselves, and effectively to the WCDs in each meeting room, and start to control them directly, not just surface the data, but actually start to control them. So this is how it works. So if we did if we were looking at hot desk booking, so that would be the first one. This is not really relevant to WCD, but this is something where you can see how I can really create the meeting rooms and the offices of the future by interacting with an app that allows me to book a hot desk on a room booking system. And Jane was talking about how that's part of Maverick's portfolio, is that these software systems now exist, and they all run in the cloud too. So basically you can do things like even understanding people's car registration plates. So anybody who's been to Vodafone headquarters in the UK, in Newbury, they have a number plate recognition system. So if your host has taken the car registration plate for you, and you've actually given them your details, as soon as you come into the visitor's car park barrier, the barrier automatically opens for you. And in some car parks now, there's digital signage which tells you what car park to park at, the reserved space. So all of these things make being a visitor or being somebody who's booking a hot desk, you actually work for the company but on a hot desk, much more simple and easy to use. So if we're looking at efficient buildings, this is really straight plays to WCD. So the ability to start to control the building's heating and ventilation by basically understanding the conditions in each room via WCD immediately turns your dumb meeting room into a smart meeting room. And again, same thing, notice the sensors. I built this slide way before I'd even heard of WCD, and yet we're all, I think, completely in line with what the type of sensors that are required. So this isn't just about energy saving, but it's also about well-being, about people's well-being. If you know that the carbon dioxide is rising in a building, which, by the way, nearly all buildings, it rises towards the end of the day when everybody's been in the building, but most buildings have got no way of doing anything about that. So if you now know that CO2 is rising and you can prove it, you may even be able to make an investment case for changing the fresh air system, improving the fresh air system in the building, because you've got absolute proof that the CO2 is rising. And by the way, there's lots of reports that prove that as CO2 rises and as temperature rises, people's productivity reduces. So there's a real business case behind this. So just coming up to summarize really, and I'll hand back to Jane, is basically we've got the capability of providing right at the bottom level a product level solution, but and using a whole bunch of specialist partners and our core vendors, including, as you can see at the bottom there, Microsoft. So this would be, WCD would be what we would call a product that we could use directly off the shelf, but we can also create solutions. So do you remember I was talking about hooking the data that came out of WCD that was in the cloud back into the systems that control the offices and the meeting rooms. Now that would be a solution that we could create using some of our core vendors who are used to controlling buildings. And then bespoke, we've even been involved, like I was saying before, with the Microsoft IoT Accelerate program, where we create complete bespoke solutions that there is no vendor for, there is no business partner who knows how to do it. And we work closely with specialists too, and even universities and research bodies to create bespoke solutions. So any of these TechData can help with, But the key one, as you can see by the base of the triangle, is we're all about really creating a market for products that can be taken directly to market right now. And that's where WCD is very exciting to us. So from sensors to cloud, we've got the capability to provide part or all of a connected building solution. And I see that WCD is going to be a real key part of that, and already is. We're talking to, there's lots of business partners that are interested in the whole WCD proposition. We've got a big choice of technology, so we can wrap WCD into future solutions for customers. And I'd love to get involved with, for instance, architects are specifying buildings and get them to understand, and that could be a brand new customer base that's never been approached before, to get them to understand that they don't need to put sensors in meeting rooms anymore. You get it when you buy WCD. So again, there's lots of other routes to market that perhaps haven't been explored yet. And within the whole TechData organization, we have a whole bunch of subject matter experts that can help with this. And we're certainly educating our partner base now on just the wonderful opportunities around connected buildings. So we think that WCD is a major advance for smart offices. We've talked a little bit about digital signage. I think that's absolutely one of sweet spots for Maverick, and with smart offices, we're going to see a lot more, I think, of interacting with the individual, and that our core vendor sales teams, like the Microsoft team, will also be very interested in how WCD can pull through much more Microsoft. So I think all parts of the TechData business are really involved with this, and are very interested in seeing how we can promote WCD into the channel and the market generally. So really, to end, that there is huge value in IoT. You know, we all know that in the consumer market, IoT has been around for years, and we're now starting to see it in the enterprise market, or some people call it industrial IoT, but that's really is enterprise IoT. We're now starting to see it in offices. We're seeing it in manufacturing plants. We're seeing it in utility companies, and we're seeing it in offices. So, and the opportunities for having IoT-enabled devices are really great. So thank you. I'll hand back to Jane.
Thank you, David. That was wonderful. Right, so now it's Ask David Lots of Questions time. So, David, a couple of questions that have come through, and I'm just going to reinforce a message I said earlier, which is we are recording this session, so it will be available for everybody later. And I also will enable the slides to be shared through Birgit and Jason and the team. So, David, we talked about cloud, which is, as you quite rightly said, a lovely way to point it out. Cloud is somebody else's computer, or lots of somebody else's computer that we can use. What's Azure then?
So Azure is exactly that. So it's a whole bunch of computers. That's the first one. But on those computers is also a whole bunch of services. So Azure is services that you can buy. So if you take out the fact that it's running on somebody else's computers, there's something else that happens on top of that, and that's software. And Azure software, for instance, one of the things that's very important to WCD is something called IoT Hub. An IoT Hub is a product that acts a bit like a telephone exchange. So it allows multiple connections in and multiple connections out. So it's routing, just like with the old-fashioned telephone exchanges. We don't get any more now. But basically, it allows you to take an input from one WCD device and route it through to the right reports, route it through to the right building, route it through to the right person. So, and knowing exactly what context that particular, those sensors on the WCD are being used, you know, what's the type of office, how big is it, all those types of things. So it's IoT Hub is one of those services that you can buy. There's another service called Streaming Analytics, which enables you to start to do all the analysis and dashboarding, which we've spoken about. And then there's things like artificial intelligence and machine learning. So all of those services are available, and many, many more on Azure. And it's just a mix and match. You pick the ones that you want for your particular task, and they're all there and all available and all interoperable. You don't have to worry about all of that stuff.
Perfect. So the sensor array technology that sits within the Sharp WCD basically then gets plugged into the telephone exchange. It's a really good analogy, and it comes out at the right position at the other end, so that the Azure cloud makes all the right connections for us. Yeah,
that's right. And that's, if you were trying to do that yourself, that would be a major job. If you wanted to buy the software and run it on your own server and everything, and you don't have to worry about that, it's just done for you.
And that's a Microsoft service, is that correct?
That's right, yeah.
Okay, and just to come back in, bring it back into WCD, why that's important for us is it's a Microsoft, obviously we know WCD is a Microsoft specified display, and therefore Microsoft are also interested in the consumption of Azure. So the more people using WCD, and the more people using the sensors, the more people that are actually consuming the Azure cloud, which is great for Microsoft because it's mean more sales for them. And there are other flavors of cloud, AWS, which is an Amazon cloud, and there are others as well. But I think Amazon is taking the lead at the moment, but I wouldn't bet against Microsoft on that one. Okay, so just to roll back here, and we've got some more questions coming in. We've got these IoT sensors that sit on the top of the WCD. They're going to sit in the meeting space, and these IoT sensors are going to look at things like heating, lighting, air quality, and meeting occupancy as well. So we're going to be able, with these IoT sensors, going through the cloud and as David says, plugging into the right place at the back to help the user make the best use of their meeting spaces, whether that's tweaking the lights and the air conditioner or whatever it is, or whether it's looking at the meeting room occupancy. Just come back at these IoT sensors. You said we've used consumer IoT for quite some time. So we've had IoT sensors in our houses for quite some time. Yeah?
That's right, yeah.
Give me some examples of what they would be.
So I suppose the best example is probably security cameras. So things like Netatmo, and there's a whole bunch of them out there. Nest, I wonder how many people have Nest sensors in their house. That's cloud operated. So anything that you've got an app on your phone that you can control something in your house. Another good example, I have Harmony at home, which is the way you can control all of your television and your Sonos and your amplifiers and all the rest of it, and your whole AV system if you have one at home. And you can do that all from the app as well. So, and then you can start to get things like, if anybody's familiar with an app called IFTTT, if this then that, and it's a service that enables all these various different cloud services start to be connected together. So you can say that if somebody comes into your house that's unknown to you, and you've seen it via your Netatmo camera, for instance, or your Hive camera, then turn on the lights to deter the burglars, because you don't know who that is, or even turn on the AV system and turn the volume up loud, whatever it is. All of those things you can start to connect together. Another one is garage door openers and gate openers. That's another very popular IoT solution. And these days, even cars, I mean, most modern cars these days come with an IoT solution built in. They tell you whether you've got, with the brake pad wear, and when your engine needs to be when your car needs to be serviced. Got it. It tells you where your car is and all that type of stuff. So they're all over the place, and we probably even forget they're there. Okay,
that's a great answer. Thank you. I love the idea of a burglar coming in and everything switches on, lights and volume and everything. It's a great deterrent. Okay, so another question is you talked about the IoT sensors being able to plug into the building control systems, potentially the smart building control systems. So the questions come in: will this be available at launch?
So the answer is yes, but obviously what happens is that as far as WCD goes, it goes to the cloud and stops. Okay, you need to then get from the cloud back to the building, and for that we have a vendor that we use. In fact, we've got a couple of vendors, but the most popular one is a company called IA Connects, and IA Connects is an appliance basically that sits in on top of the building management system in the building and connects directly to Azure and is certified on Azure. And then all you really need is a specialist that can connect the two clouds together, basically the IA Connects Azure cloud and the WCD cloud. So there's a bit of in-cloud connectivity to do, and immediately it will work. So it doesn't all work as one, because obviously everybody has a different way of controlling their building. So there's a bit of specialist stuff that goes on, but basically it is available now.
Okay, so I'm just going to reframe that a little bit, because we've obviously got WSI, which is a workspace intelligence application that will be running alongside WCD, and that is a standalone dashboard essentially that will produce, as David quite rightly said, all of these measurements will come out into a single dashboard that the IT admin can then see. At launch, this will be a standalone version. So WSI will be a standalone version, as David just outlined. However, if an enterprise does have a smart buildings enabled solution already, then there is some work to do to connect those two at the back. So yes, from a bespoke point of view, we can at launch put the two together, but there'll be some work to do there and some consultancy. And also WSI, which is a workspace intelligence application, which Sharp are building at the moment, that will be a standalone dashboard, which, as you quite rightly say, David, there is obviously so many smart office solutions out there that it can't link to every single one out of the box. So there'll be some work to do on that. Okay, thank you. So the next one, are there any security considerations with a smart building solution, and how do we handle security?
So absolutely, there are a whole bunch of security considerations, and I don't know whether you've watched the horror films where all the lights are sort of being controlled by some malevolent computer that's switching out the lights as everybody's running down the corridor and that type of thing. Well, actually, believe it or not, that is theoretically possible if somebody could hack into a building management system. So the key thing is the data from WCD to the cloud is already protected via Microsoft's own specification for security. So you can't hack in and find out when somebody's in a particular meeting room, for instance. So from the point of view of understanding and hacking into the data that's coming out of WCD, that's covered. Now, on the way back, if you were controlling the building, that's also covered by our partners and their appliances, and they're operated on a high level of security as well. And then all you have to do is make sure the channel between the two clouds is kept secure. And the key thing about all of this now is that you can't overestimate the importance of security and having a complete security audit before you start these types of projects. And you know, the chief information security officers need to be involved with any of these projects. We've all probably seen the horror stories about the air conditioning vendor puts in an IoT sensor into a data center, and then they use that to suck off data from the data center and compromise, you know, all of the secure data that's in there. So you can't overestimate the importance. So it has been considered throughout the design of the solution.
Perfect, thank you. And just to add to that, I don't know who's seen the hackathon that happened, and actually somebody was able to hack into the White House through their AV management solution. So yeah, that was last year. So security is hugely important, and if it is an interest area for any of your customers, then please come and talk to Maverick, because we do have a free security assessment of AV solutions, so we can quickly run some diagnostics on your customer's behalf and look at where there's any potential holes in there, like the White House, for example. Okay, so we've covered a lot. There was just a couple of things from me. The IoT sensors that are built into the WCD, the Sharp WCD now, will these get any better? Will they change over time? Can you access them, update them remotely? Is that something you know, David?
I don't know. My view is it's like anything else in when you're talking about manufacturing and production, that I'm sure that there will be some updates and upgrades to them as technology improves. But in general, with manufacturer, once that's set, they'll be there for a number of years. And the sensors that are being proposed are top grade, high quality sensors that I don't think that we're going to see very much improvement over the next few years in those types of sensors. So my view is that if you wanted to, they are built into the device. You're not going to be able to take them out and change them for another one. So let's put it that way.
Okay.
But if there's a Mark II WCD comes along, I'm sure as technology improves, that'll have other sensors. But the key thing always will be that there'll be cloud interoperability. So whatever happens, you'll still be able to see that all in one place in the cloud, regardless of the version of the WCD that you get.
Perfect. Okay. So if anybody's got any last questions, just pop them into the Q&A box now. I'm just going to wrap up. David, you talked a lot of verticals, and a lot of verticals are using smart buildings and smart office solutions. I think the beauty of WCD for me is this can be used in a SMB, a small organization with maybe 10 meeting rooms, up to a huge enterprise that's got thousands of meeting rooms, because this is not dependent on you having, or the organization having, a smart office solution already. And WCD can sit on its own, and you can deliver to the customer important in-time information about their meeting space, and that user then can make really good decisions on how best to use their meeting spaces in the future. Have they got enough? Are they being used properly? Or is the air conditioning right? Is the air quality right? Because what we often find is in an afternoon, certain rooms aren't being used very much, and it may be because the sunlight's streaming in and the rooms get too hot. So then just by tweaking the air conditioning, the air quality, you can make better room choices, your users can make better room choices, and your administrators can ensure that the right environment is there for everybody that joins the meetings. So we haven't got any more questions. I think we've answered them all. Thank you all for your questions. This recording will be available. We'll send it out for everybody to use. Please share around with your colleagues. And if you have any questions for myself or David, then please don't hesitate to get in contact with us after the event. I will put our details onto the slides that we share with you. So David, thank you very much from me. I learned a lot during that one as well. It was the start of the journey, guys. Just to remember, we're going to do this together. We're going to have more training on Teams, on Azure, and then anything else that you think you need support with around WCD. So thanks very much for your time. Thank you, David. And I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Thanks all. Bye-bye.
Bye.